Morning. I also have some other information I'd like to present for the board's consideration in what we are asking for at this intersection and how that comports with the same type of zoning in other areas that were done previously by the planning board. Mr. Chairman, the consideration for this particular intersection of Beulah Road and Mobile Highway, there have been several pieces of information I think is good to share this morning, and just to reemphasize what the board may have already looked at in terms of comments, principally from the staff, but talking about transportation to begin with. You have a interoffice memorandum from your professional engineer, Mr. Phillips, Chris Phillips, transportation engineer, and he has offered some comments about the activities going on at this particular intersection and roadways rather that make this intersection very principal in terms of what's happening in the area. There are two things that are proposed or have been proposed by Florida DOT because they own Beulah Road and they own Mobile Highway. And they're looking for improvements to be made at that intersection. And you will notice in the email that was, or the memo that was sent to you, that Mobile Highway currently has a traffic count of 13,600 vehicles per day. They're planned on resurfacing Mobile Highway from 9 Mile Road all the way into Pine Forest Road at the fairgrounds. They are also proposing, and more significantly so, improvements to Beulah Road, State Road 99, from Mobile Highway all the way to the area that's going to be the new interchange on I-10. Traffic counts for that particular Beulah Road are 8,600 trips per day. That takes it all the way to Isaacs Lane, which links right at the interstate location that's proposed. Why are they doing this? Well, the Florida DOT is anticipating a considerable increase in traffic in the area, and the improvements for Beulah Road are not anything that's way out. It's very current. And according to Mr. Phillips's email, the Isaacs Lane, Beulah Road construction, north-south construction in 2025. So that's just a little over a year and a half away from us. So, Mr. Chairman, there is a considerable amount of interest by DOT at that particular intersection. That's the reason they put the loop-actuated and controlled traffic signal up there. That's another reason that the owner of this property agreed with Florida DOT to provide enough right-of-way to do continuous right turn swings through that intersection. That's especially important to the people that attend the county's facility out on Mobile Highway. That during a horse's presentation or activities out that way, horse trailers, and I haul six horses myself, leaving that fairground location and making that swing through that right turn was something that the DOT needed to have, and it was one of the earlier requests of the Escambia County. Mr. Chairman, the other comment before I get into the details of the staff comments would be the compatibility of the requests that we're asking for and how it would affect similarly zoned areas close by. For example, the relationship that the county references in their comments of a commercial activity going in next door to a low-density residential is something that just cannot be compatible. I've got two examples here of where it's very compatible. It's adjacent relationships between low-density residential and commercial can be found a lot of different places, but two significant ones are right close by. The Publix at the corner, southeast corner of Beulah Road and 9 Mile Road. I rezoned that, I think around 89 or 1990 for the Ted Ciano family. And there was not a whole lot out there at that particular point. But right now, there are several acres that cover that entire public complex that are commercially zoned. And right to the east of it and right to the south of it are low-density residential. Not unusual and not a lot different than what we're going to experience or what we're requesting for at our intersection. The second one out in that area, and perhaps even larger yet, is the residential and commercial development going in just east of Nature's Walk. Many of you are familiar with that title. It's a big, nice subdivision right across from Navy Federal, but this is to the east. And I did that probably, I'm thinking 6 or 7 years ago, and it was owned and promoted then by, some of you might remember, Jim Moulton and Ed Chadbourne. That is in place today. Commercial activities are being constructed and ongoing at the front of all of that, and it's right next door to one of the premier subdivisions in that particular area. So the notion and the point I'm making here is that commercial next to a low-density residential or something less than that is compatible. And the examples, I think, that I've brought to your attention here show that, Mr. Chairman, to be the case. With regard to the actual documents that show the approval conditions that staff reviewed and provided me with a copy of it, compatibility or consistency with the comprehensive plan. Out of the 6 items that we have to comply with, that's the first one. Staff agrees that it is compatible and it is consistent. Item B, consistency with the Land Development Code. Some of their comments say that the district allows for non-residential uses that are compatible with suburban residential neighborhoods and the natural resources of the area. I think my examples show that a non-residential use such as commercial can be compatible next door to that type of residential use. Comments under that same category for the locational criteria. The number one thing that's suggested here, proximity to an intersection. This is certainly proximity to an intersection. It's right at the intersection, but that's the number one listing. And then moving on, Mr. Chairman, the comments under criteria C, compatibility with surrounding uses. I think my examples that I've presented to you show that it can be compatible with surrounding uses. We have many examples along 9 Mile Road, as I've just outlined, that show that it can be. Criteria D, appropriate is spot zoning. As you read through this, the very last sentence says spot zoning is not by itself prohibited, but due to its potentially adverse impacts on adjoining residential, it carries a higher burden. We have here, that's a high profile of interest with the Florida DOT, and we have other examples of this type of zoning going in next door to something residentially oriented, would fall under that particular category in terms of its impact on the surrounding neighbors. So, Mr. Chairman, I would suggest the board consider that while it carries a different zoning category, if you read the zoning information that's provided under those findings, we think that a commercial use at that intersection is compatible with not only things that are happening there now, but things that are happening further on today. A couple of items about things that are happening now and today. Mr. Chairman, the information that you have from county staff takes a look only at the property within that 500-foot radius. What's going to impact that 500 feet? What you don't have there is, a matter of fact, right across the street on the south side of this intersection. And for whatever reason, I don't know, you were not provided a photograph of that particular use. That is a non-residential use that's going on there right now. That building has been used for 3 or 4 uses over the years. It currently, I understand, is a child care center. But the notion that there's not anything else going on in that area other than single-family residential zoning, I think that if you take a look at what's right across the street, you would see that other things are going on in that area as well. Mr. Chairman, the 500-foot radius, I think, is something that has been established long ago. But in terms of a major intersection like that, that does have the ability to be impacted, I think the dimensional area for an analysis needs to be more than 500 feet. Mr. Chairman, we did a windshield survey on the 3rd of last month of an area south of that intersection, but still on Beulah Road. At that time, in 5 subdivisions that are there and 2 others that are under construction, that totals to be 390 residential units south of that intersection. 99% of the people that leave those new residential homes in that area, they've got to go north. And when they go north, they're going to go right through this particular intersection. Those that are headed to Navy Federal or to downtown Pensacola, I would suggest, will proceed through that intersection to 9 Mile Road, make a right turn on 9 Mile Road, and then go into Navy Federal if that's where their job is, or continue on to the interstate and then head into, I presume, Pensacola at that juncture. So again, looking at something just saying 500 feet, this is what's happening in there, you've got to take a broader look in an area, especially one that's developing like this area of Escambia County. So, Mr. Chairman, my closing remarks would be that the staff recommendations and findings under B, C, D, and E, B being transitional area, C being compatibility, D being spot zoning, and E being change conditions, I would ask that the board consider adopting the findings of fact that we provided in lieu of the findings of fact that have been provided, Mr. Chairman, by the staff.
All right. Thank you. Do any board members have any questions for Mr. Page at this time?
I'll ask real quick. Ms. Page, did staff recommend you possibly try to persuade you to go to a different zoning of lesser degree? I'm just curious.
Mr. Chairman, we looked at, and the staff's been helpful for this all the way through, but only in the sense that this is what you got to do because this is what's listed there. But if you take a look at the zoning of commercial and something less than that, right across the street, as I mentioned, is high-density mixed use. And there was considerable interest in the things that could be provided under commercial that are not generally in the area, especially right across the street. When in fact, if you take a look at those things that are allowed under commercial, the major difference between what's allowed at the commercial that we're requesting and the high-density mixed use right across the street has to do with gasoline. You can't sell that in high-density mixed use, but you can sell that in commercial. The owner has a plan of developing that for the service station and convenience store. Got to have gasoline sales for that. Commercial allows for that, so that's the reason it's been chosen.
Thank you.
Allison, do you have comments on that? To address the question about did we offer? Any other suggestions, please respond.
Yes, sir. We did speak to Mr. Page, and we did ask him what his, here again, rezoning is not site-specific, but in order to get that applicant to the right area of what they want to do and what's allowed. We did ask him, and so he did say that he wanted to do the convenience store, and that was the only option. Now, the school is across Mobile Highway, and it is already zoned, it's zoned now HDMU, which will allow that. So that was the only other option, was to try to go to something lower, but because of the commercial aspect of what he wanted, it wouldn't allow anything other than commercial or higher.
Let me add something on that, invest. And we can get into the facts of the case. High-density mixed use, it was the OR6. The OR6 basically, it was neighborhood commercial type uses. Now, we got to be very, very careful. We do not want there to be a proliferation of spots of strip commercial zoning at that intersection. We'll get into the facts later. This area is predominantly low-density residential. There are uses that could have been given on this property, but for this to go to a substantial increase from the very basic all the way up to a zoning category that would allow for some heavy commercial type uses. We don't look at site specifics now. We look at the potential. Now, do we want to, those things that he mentioned before, with much respect for Mr. Page, much respect. We don't know all the facts surrounding those things. We don't know all the cases surrounding those things. Plus, just because things were done in the past, respectfully, that does not mean that they were done according to the rules of the law.
Mr. Adams?
Yeah, I want to ask a question, because I was at just one town hall meeting. Another gentleman over there was with me. And I didn't get a warm, fuzzy feeling that the state was going to do any kind of widening of that road. Because right now, we have a school up there, Beulah Academy of Science, with over 300 students. And then we got 900 students over at Beulah Middle. And we already having difficulty navigating that intersection on 9 Mile Road because the traffic's backing up so far.
Yes, sir.
Okay? But
Mr.
did you
Adams?
get impression that the state was, I mean, even Isaac Lane, the intersection up there, there's no money funded for that now, right?
Mr. Adams, I do not want to speak for Mr. Chris Phillips, but there was some information that was relayed last night. Some of the other people were there last night. Those state roads, they respectfully, I'm not an expert. If money is not there, they can be pulled just like that. So just because money is funded for that project, that still does not mean that that highly commercial area could go. So we don't, Mr. Chris Phillips, he is the expert on that, but I agree with Mr. Adams. There were some things that he stated last night. So I would not want to indulge, and unless I could bring him down here, but there were some things that he stated that were not consistent with what is being said today. And he is a certified transportation person, and he did make some comments last night as well.
Right. Now, and he said specifically, south of 9 Mile
Yes,
Road
he did.
is not on the plans to be widened at all.
That's what he said.
Yeah, so, okay.
Mr. Chairman, I would like to comment on that as well. All I am going on is and I'm guessing that you got this as part of your package as well. I don't know that I mentioned, and I did not say that any of this is going to be 4-lane. This is resurfacing only. I'm not sure about the concerns for the school traffic situation. But all I'm going by, again, is what is in the memo that we have here this morning.
Right. And Mr. Perry, you said resurfacing. It's a difference between resurfacing what's already there, then if they're going to start doing expansion of the lane. It's a difference. So we want to be clear. If we base it on resurfacing, and that still does not impact rezoning's criteria. It just they got money to do some cover work, resurfacing.
So there is no taking done by FDOT on Beulah going north of Mobile Highway currently? I'm not familiar with that one, so.
That
Is there-
wasn't stated last night, so
So there is
I
no
don't wanna-
public taking going on, correct?
Not according to my understanding of what was said last night. So
Okay.
that's why I want to be clear with that.
Mr. Chairman, I think one thing we want to be very cautious of, and that would be selective analysis.
Right.
I've given you some examples here that show that the county previously has looked at the combination of commercial next door to a lower residential, really low residential. They approved that. It was on a main road, main intersections, not all that different from what we're looking at here. I don't think there's anyone that would present a very detailed argument that this is not an intersection that would ever be developed into having a service station or a convenience store dispensing gasoline, which is the goal here today.
All right. Any more questions from the board? You have anything else at this moment, Mr. Page?
Thank you.
All right, thanks. All right, staff, if we could have your presentation at this time.
Okay. Again, this is Z 2023-09, 7998 Mobile Highway, requesting a rezoning from LDR to commercial. And I would like to say that each case that we do at the rezoning, each case stands on its own merit. So regardless of what happened next door or across the street or down, each case, the situations may be different and the criteria may apply differently. The first criteria A, consistency with the comprehensive plan. The proposed amendment to commercial is consistent with the future land use, mixed-use suburban. It does allow for retail sales and services. However, it must be noted that the range of allowable uses does not mention commercial or general commercial activities, and these types of uses are more suitable for more urbanized areas and not for suburban area, which is defined by predominantly low-density residential. Allowing for upzoning with more intense commercial uses with the existing suburban area has a potential to have an adverse impact on established suburban neighborhoods. The proposed amendment would be consistent with the 1.51 by redeveloping the underutilized property and promoting the efficient use of existing utilities and infrastructures. Criteria B, consistency with the Land Development Code. The 5.3 plus or minus acre property is at the intersection of a major collector and a minor arterial roadway. The portion of Beulah Road belongs to FDOT. The request to rezone to commercial would satisfy the locational criteria at an intersection while allowing more intense use such as retail sales and service along the major thoroughfare. The primary intent of the LDR zoning district is to allow for single-family homes and low-density residential development with a maximum allowed density of 4 dwelling units per acre, while the commercial allows for 25 dwelling units per acre. The low-density residential district establishes appropriate areas and regulates residential densities within the suburban area. The Land Development Code affirms that the district is appropriate to provide transition between areas zoned or used for rural residential or rural mixed use, and areas zoned for low-density mixed use or medium-density residential. Based upon this provision, staff determined that changing the zoning from LDR, which is clearly a single-family residential area, to commercial would allow for a various of commercial operations and more intense activities and densities, which is not an appropriate transitional zoning at this location. And I also would like to say, the district is for commercial, rezoning to commercial. The district is appropriate to provide transition between areas zoned or used as high-density mixed use and areas zoned or used for heavy commercial light industrial. Criteria C, compatible with surrounding uses. The proposed amendment is not compatible with the surrounding existing residential uses in the area, as the majority of the surrounding land uses are single-family residential, which you can actually see in the existing land use map. The intersection, the HDMU, the preschool that we spoke of earlier, that's not adjacent, it's not contiguous, it's across the major arterial roadway of Mobile Highway. Criteria D, spot zoning. It was determined that commercial would establish and reinforce the condition of spot zoning, as there is no commercially zoned properties in the area. Although the intersection is appropriate for the location for a commercial development to service the residential neighborhood, the area is single-family residential and would have an impact on the surrounding uses. And so spot zoning is not by itself prohibited, and it's not a reason to disapprove something, but it's just a note that it is not the same contiguous zoning. Criteria E, appropriate with changed conditions. The land uses and development conditions with the subject property surrounding the property have not changed. Although the property is located at a major intersection, the development in the area is low-density residential, with single-family residential lots abutting the subject property. The request for commercial, the potential uses, increases in density and intensities allowed by the commercial district would be less compatible with the existing surrounding residential development patterns. And that's all of staff's analysis.
And I want to add something. I know Mr. Page stated that this is not spot zoning. Staff concurs that it is. Now, again, it's not a prohibition, but there must be evidence to show that there is not. This clearly, according to the black and white language of the Land Development Code, the words, this is spot zoning. So it's not adjacent, so it's isolated, so we gotta be very careful. The black and white language, regardless of what may happen in the future, we gotta look at the now. This does meet the definition of spot zoning, clearly.
And I'd also like to add with the criteria E, with the change conditions, Mr. Page stated that there had been changes in the area. When I went and did the site visit within the area, there were no new developments. I did not ride down to the South Beulah, but if you're looking at the 500, even the 800, radius, there hadn't been any changes as far as newly commercial, other subdivisions in that immediate area.
And this area is clearly a rural, predominantly low, suburban, rural type area. So that's what we gotta be careful. When we start doing these things, that have impact on the future. You got a proliferation, a snowball effect. But right now, there is no growth. You can have growth. But this is a substantial increase. And that could be the clear definition of strip commercial development.
All right, thank you, staff. Are there any questions or comments from the board at this time for staff? All right. We will move into public comment. For those members of the public who wish to speak on this matter, please note that the planning board bases its decisions on the approval conditions and exceptions described in section 2-7.2 of the Escambia County Land Development Code. During our deliberations, the board will not consider general statements of support or opposition. Accordingly, please limit your testimony to the approval conditions and exceptions described in section 2-7.2. Please also note that only individuals who are present and give testimony on the record at this hearing before the planning board will be allowed to speak at the subsequent hearing before the BCC. And when I'll call you up, I think I've got 3 speaker forms for this case. If you'll state your full name and address for the record and be sworn in. And so I know a lot of this is confusing at times, but what we have to look at up here when someone comes for a request for a zoning change is that A, B, C, D, and E criteria. If you want to come in here and change your zoning on your property, you've got to meet those 5 criteria and then tell us why you meet those 5 criteria. The staff then goes and looks at it and gives us their analysis of what they see, and then we've got to figure out, is this a good idea or a bad idea or somewhere in between, and can we get to a ending point? So when you come up to speak to these issues today, just kind of keep that in mind, is that we've got to keep our decision based in those 5 criteria, and that's really all we're able to look at as this board when we send a decision to the BCC, and then ultimately they'll make the final decision off the recommendation that we send. So with that being said, we'll start with George Bone. You'll come up and state your name and address for the record and be sworn in.
George Bond, 8029 Thoroughbred Road.
All right, if you raise your right hand, do you solemnly swear that the testimony you're about to give will be the
I do. Morning. I just came to voice my opposition to this rezoning. My house is within the 500 feet. And we don't need any more convenience stores. 0.8 of a mile north on Beulah Road, there's already 2, and soon to be a Wawa, so that'll make 3. And that's my testimony.
All right, thanks, sir. Bill Carter, if you'll please come up, state your name and address for the record and be sworn in.
Bill Carter from 8023 Thoroughbred Road in Pensacola.
All right, you raise your right hand. Do you solemnly swear that the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do. All right. I'm opposed to this also. You know, looking at the paperwork that I've got, we were going to go 5 acres, which was 4 units per 1 acre, up to 20 units, 25 units per 1 acre. Pardon? 25 acres per 1 unit. That would total 500. I mean, not sorry. Would total 125 extra units. Now, I don't know if what you're going to be putting in 25 units. You could be building widgets. Doesn't matter. But along with 125 units, you're going to have vehicle transportation to go there, to and from, whether you're building apartments or widgets. Let's just say you're going to put an extra 2 cars per unit. We're going to have about 300 extra additional cars just coming from that parcel of land, hitting that intersection, and as previously stated, Beulah Road gets backed up, especially from 3 o'clock to 5 o'clock, and it probably takes you 2, 3, maybe even 4 cycles of that light to be able to get through that intersection and to proceed eastbound down Mobile Highway. So any use above what it's already at 4 units per acre, I think is excessive. I think it needs to stay at a level of a low density, and we don't need to go to a high density of 25 units per acre. That's all I have. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. Ms. Blackwell, if you'll please come up and state your name and address for the record and be sworn in.
Teresa Blackwell, 6670 Wonder Lake Road. I live in Beulah.
Do you solemnly swear that the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do. Last night, I met with the Carters at another meeting, and generally, I am very busy with OLF 8 right now, trying to counter fabrications like the Navy has been colluding with the county for 25, 30 years, when actually it came to us in 2013 as part of the county, as part of what the public could comment on. So today, I woke up, generally I'm not coming to all these unless one makes me particularly aggravated, and this is one of them. As I shared with the Carters, this violates 2 of the items here. It is not compatible with the surroundings, criterion C. It is surrounded by houses, and we have to think about what this zoning would allow. They say they want a gas station and other retail, but that zoning, if they were to sell it to someone else, would allow up to 25 units, an apartment complex. Would you like to look at that from your backyard fence? I don't think so. This is residential. The other, and there's a school across the street, but that's a good use for a neighborhood, to have a school there. Now, the other thing is appropriate if spot zoning. No, it is not appropriate. And I thank the county staff for doing a good job on this one. This clearly is not a good transition between types of zoning. There is no commercial anywhere in there. The commercial would allow a gas station. So, actually, one of the things that makes me so mad is that this whole thing is a waste of everyone's time and a waste of the applicant's money. Surely the county advised them that this would not pass, as Mr. Jones just laid out for us. We have to think carefully about wrecking a neighborhood like this, and applicants should be discouraged from applying when they're going to waste their money on the application as well as on someone to represent them. And as a representative, I would not take a case like this. So this angers me that this is even happening, and it definitely should be turned down. The other thing I would say is that it is not just those 5 criteria. As I have told you multiple times, our land development code also says once you consider those 5 criterias, go down past the part about the trailers and the buses, and it says if it affects the quality of life for the neighborhood, you can consider things like traffic, like Mr. Carter talked about. So that is part of the process. Please quit telling people you will not consider anything like that. Thank you very much. Please turn it down. And I'm glad I was here. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Blackwell. All right. That's the last speaker on this case. Board members, do you have any questions for the applicant, staff, or members of the public who spoke today? All right. Staff, do you have anything else? Anything further, Mr. Page? All right. If not, I'll entertain a motion one way or the other, if we've got one.
Regarding case Z 2023-09, based on staff's findings and specifically criteria B, C, D, and E, I recommend denial.
All right, we've got a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
All right, we got a second. Is there any discussion on the motion? All right. All those in favor of the motion, please signify by raising your right hand. All those opposed? All right, motion carries. And the upzoning was denied. All right, we will now move on to our next case today. Okay. All right. So our second rezoning application for consideration today is case Z 2023-10, which requests rezoning of, sorry, y'all. Requests rezoning of Highway 297A residential, 18 dwelling units per acre. The property size is 9.43 acres, and the applicant is Mr. Buddy Page, agent for Hamad Hoke, is the owner. Members of the board, have there been any ex parte communication between you, the applicant, of the applicant's agents, attorneys, or witnesses with fellow planning board members or anyone from the general public prior to your hearing? Have you visited the subject property? And please also disclose if you are a relative or business associate of the applicant or the applicant's agent.
No to all.
No to all.
Not all.
No to all?
No to all.
And at all.
All right, and we will need to check in and make sure that Tim's good as well when he gets back. All right. Staff, was the notice of the hearing sent to all interested parties?
Yes, sir.
Was notice of the hearing posted on the subject property?
Yes, sir.
All right. Applicant, if you're okay with it, we'll have staff go ahead and present the photos and photography, so.
Okay, so Mr. Chairman, I will do the maps and photography, but first I'd like to note that the applicant did send us an email yesterday wishing to continue this case for a time uncertain. So if you'd like if you'd like to talk to the applicant and hear it from him, he can explain, or
All right, Mr. Page.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. When we originally submitted this application, staff reviewed it, and at a point probably less than 10 days ago or so, staff shared with us some information that this particular piece of property had been the subject of a previous application some year or two, several years ago. During that application review, the initial review by the staff for whoever that was that had the property back at that point, one of the things that came up at that meeting was the engineer of record for the project back then shared with them that there have been a number of borings that his company had done on that property, and based upon what they have found preliminarily, they dropped the case to have it rezoned back then. That information was just shared with us. We have attempted to contact the engineer for that, who used to be in Pensacola. We have now understand that he is in the Panama City area. Our purpose and our need to continue this would be for us to meet with him at some point and find out what he found, where on the property did they do these cast drillings, and found what we're told is hurricane debris that had been buried on the property. The owner of the property, very elderly lady, did not share that information with the realtor or with the buyer. That is getting involved in a legal case with an attorney hired, but that's separate. We're here today to find out and request the board consider giving us probably about a 60-day period of time for that same type of thing to come back in, either from that company or someone else, to make a determination if all of this property has debris underneath it, or if it's just selective pieces and areas where, even though it's there, they still can meet the criteria for foundations for a 3-story apartment project, which is what the owner is planning to construct on the site. So, Mr. Chairman, with that information in hand, it was quite a shock to the owner, and the request then is made to continue this to a time certain. We've discussed that with the staff. If we had found the engineer and they came back and said, here is the paperwork on that, this shows where we had our cast drillings, and it's not in the whole area, it's just in this one particular area, we probably could proceed. The problem that we have in discussing with the staff, if we find that information out, say 2 to 3 weeks from now, and we take then and modify our application to include whatever may or may not have been found, staff may not have enough time to analyze that and prepare their analysis of that in time to get it to the board for the next meeting. So we discussed delaying a maximum not to exceed 60 days that would allow us to do the due diligence regarding the potential use of that site, which was unknown up until the staff shared that with us. So, Mr. Chairman, for those reasons, we're asking that it be continued.
And if I may, Chairman, thank you, Mr. Page, and we do want to set for the record that he made this request. So therefore, whatever, if it comes back with this rezoning or another rezoning, it still has to be reviewed accordingly per the zoning criteria. But I do want to set for the record so that we can understand clearly that in this particular request for HDR, staff is making staff is stating that it does not meet that criteria for that upzoning of HDR. So I do want to say that for the record as well. But he is making this, and we do have, there are many citizens who are here as well. We thank them for their time as well. But at this case, in this particular instance, he's making the request. If it comes back, if he decides to bring it back, he will be responsible for all of the application fees of all of those things as well. It'll be on his dime. But staff is stating again for the record that we saying that it does not meet the criteria to go from low-density residential to high-density residential. Staff finding that it did not meet those rezoning criteria.
Mr. Chairman, just as a follow-up to that, I didn't realize we'd get into any type of analysis here today, but I would share with you that the zoning for the subdivision, which is adjacent to this and on the north side, when they came in to do their rezoning, the north half of that entire subdivision is zoned the same thing we're asking for on the south half.
I'm going to just, Mr. Page, I'm going to stop you there just before we get into all that. If we're going to postpone it, then we'll do all this in 2 months, and if we're not, then we'll jump right into it, okay?
That's what
So,
we're requesting today,
I
Mr.
got you.
Chairman, consideration.
And then, okay, so let's have that discussion first. Is this something that the board's willing to allow to postpone until, I assume, the August meeting?
Whenever it's up to them, we'll work with them.
That's what it sounds like here today.
So moved.
So move to postpone. Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All right, all those in favor, please raise your hand. All right, all those opposed? Okay, so we're granted to postpone this case. I know this is an aggravation to those that showed up today. The notifications of this case coming back forward, will those be resent out? Yes. And so that the public is aware? And so I assume that everybody that probably is here today, they probably got something in the mail. And so sorry, guys. I know this happens from time to time, and again, I think it sounds like Mr. Page probably didn't have all of, or his client didn't have all the information when they bought this property. And so I think in fairness, to the property owner, allowing them to get their ducks in a row. I hate this happened. I hate y'all drove down here this morning for something very exciting like this. But we'll see you again in August, and they'll let you know. The staff will let you know when that meeting is about this property. And we do have another case. So if you signed up for the next case as well, we'll get into that one.
And I want to say this, and I know we all make most of it clear for the record. I don't want no one to have to come back and let us know. We told him about it, but it was on them. It was not on staff. They had to make that decision whether to withdraw, and we just received notification yesterday. I won't be for the so it's not staff, because when we withdrawn earlier, we definitely would have sent out public notification. Email blast to try to get everybody not to attend, not to come down. So, but it wasn't staff. It was based upon them not talking about on the page. I want to be clear for the record, because I have to.
Mr. Chairman, that's correct. The problem is over on our side. Staff's worked with us. They didn't have to share that information with us about the history, going way back to whatever date that was. They've been very cooperative in working with us on that, and we appreciate that.
All right, yes, sir. All righty. So we'll move into our third rezoning application for consideration. It is Z-2023-11, which requests rezoning of 6290 West 9 Mile Road by Mr. Buddy Page, agent for Muhammad Haq, the owner. This is property size 1.96 plus or minus acres from low density residential district, 4 dwelling units per acre, to commercial, 25 dwelling units per acre. Members of the board, have there been any ex parte communication between you, the applicant's agents, attorneys, or witnesses with the fellow planning board members or anyone from the general public prior to this hearing? Have you visited the subject property? Please also disclose if you are a relative or business associate of the applicant or the applicant's agent.
No to all?
No to all.
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 Staff, was the notice of the hearing sent to all interested parties?
Yes, sir.
And was the notice of the hearing posted on the subject property? All right, thank you. Mr. Page, are we still good with staff presenting the location maps and photos to start? Okay, staff, you can go ahead.
My name is Christina Smith. I'm an urban planner for Development Services. This is for rezoning 2023-11. 6290 West 9 Mile Road is rezoning from LDR residential, 4 dwelling units per acre, to commercial, 25 dwelling units per acre. This is a location map showing the proposed property. This is the 500-foot radius zoning showing commercial to the left with LDR on the other side. This is a featured land use map showing MUS with commercial on the west side. This is the existing land use map showing there's a church to the right, there's some vacant property to the left that is zoned commercial, and then there's a fire station. Then over on the right, there's some more single-family dwellings. This is the aerial map of the property. This is a public hearing sign posted on the subject property. This is looking on the subject property. This is looking east along 9 Mile Road. And this is looking west along 9 Mile Road. And that concludes the maps and photography.
All right. Thank you very much. Mr. Page, would you please come forward? No, we've already got you sworn in. Did you receive a copy of the rezoning hearing package with the findings of fact for this case?
Yes, sir.
All right. Do you understand that you have the burden of providing by substantial competent evidence that the proposed rezoning is consistent with the comprehensive plan, furthers the goals, objectives, and policies of the comprehensive plan, and is not in conflict with any portion of the county's land development code?
Mr. Chairman, we concur with all of the findings of the staff, and if it would please the board, we're in a position to adopt those staff findings as our own.
All right. Thank you very much. Board, so I guess we're kind of in a position for that we've got this, the applicant is in favor or in agreement with the staff's findings. We do have some comments from the public. So I think for their sake for coming out today, if we can go through those staff's findings so we can see those criteria and what the applicant is agreeing with staff on here. Does that sound good with everybody up this way? All right, staff?
Okay, so for criteria A, the proposed amendment to commercial is consistent with the intent and purpose of the current future land use category MUS, mixed-use suburban. MUS allows for residential and non-residential uses. Criteria B, the proposed amendment is consistent with the intent and purpose of the Land Development Code. The commercial district establishes appropriate areas and land use regulations for general commercial activities, specifically retailing of commodities and services. The major intent of this district is to allow more diverse and intense uses than the neighborhood commercial uses. Criteria C, historically this lot has been used as a commercial business. The business was built in the 1960s prior to zoning and has been used commercially throughout the years. Within the impacted areas, there are properties zoned LDR, commercial, and HCLI down the road. The request to rezone to commercial will allow for a range of commercial development along the arterial roadway that could provide services to the neighboring subdivisions. Criteria D, the requested zoning would not be considered spot zoning as there is other commercial zoning properties adjacent to the subject property to the west. And then criteria E, the building on this property was built in the 1960s prior to zoning and has been used as a commercial business throughout the years. The land uses of development conditions within the area surrounding the site are changing. The area along 9 Mile Road has changed and is continuing to change with new subdivisions, new commercial development, as well as a new middle school. It would not be premature to allow the request to commercially along the portion of 9 Mile Road.
All right, thank you very much. Does anybody have any questions for staff at this moment? All right, so we will jump into public comment. So I think I've got 3 speaker forms, and those who wish to speak on this matter, please note that the planning board bases its decisions on the approval conditions and exceptions described in section 2-7.2 of the Escambia County Land Development Code. And so and then also if you're wanting to speak at the Board of County Commission meeting on this topic, you will also need to speak here today with us. So if you'll come up, please state your full name and address for the record and be sworn in. And I've got Arbutus Mullins.
My name is Arbutus Mullins, Arbutus Mullins.
Raise your right hand. Do you solemnly swear that the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do. I'm very disappointed because it sounds to me like the staff is kind of agreeing with this. First of all, I want to tell you I've been a resident of Beulah for over 41 years. I live down a little dirt road. There's 4 homes back there. I'm the newcomer there. Everyone else, the other 2 families have been back there longer than me. When I saw this, the possibility of 25 units per acre, I absolutely could not believe it. We already have problems with flooding that we never had before. The drainage in Beulah has never been all that great, but where we were surrounded by woods, we are surrounded by D.R. Horton homes. My neighbor, who I believe is going to speak, has had his property flooded, his garage flooded. He has lost thousands of dollars of property. This dirt road is maintained by us neighbors. County has nothing to do with it, and we have spent a substantial amount of money trying to maintain this road. After hearing today, I'm understanding that there could be a gas station put in there. Well, I have a well. That's my only source of water because I live in the very back. So I don't have ECUA. Yes, that has been businesses. Ever since I've been out there, there's been some form of business, but they are small businesses. At one time, it was a little feed store. At one time, it was a little general store. It's never been up to 50 units on this 1.96 acre of property. I'm extremely worried about flooding. The traffic, when I leave for work in the morning, I can sit anywhere from 5 to 7, 8 minutes just trying to pull out of my driveway. I can only imagine if we have 50 apartments there or a gas station, how much worse that's going to be. There is a school less than half a mile down the road. What impact is that going to have on traffic for that school, which is already some concerns for residents? If I can quickly, looking at my little yellow sheet, it says that you will not approve this if it is likely to diminish the quality of life. Absolutely. I have grandchildren, my neighbor has grandchildren that might be wanting to ride their bikes on that road. Do you think I'm going to let them, with a gas station or 50 apartments there? And I'm sorry, but renters are not going to have the same concern for the property as people that's lived in Beulah for over 40 years. Detriment to the community or decrease in property value? Absolutely will decrease our property value. We have all worked our entire lives to pay for that. My time's up, but
You can have a couple more seconds.
please consider the people of Beulah that don't live in a new subdivision. We've got our modest homes, but, please think about, we're only four homes back there, 3 families. Please think about us. We may not be D.R. Horton, we may not be this company that's wanting to do this, but, please think about us little residents. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, next up, I've got Kevin Young. If you'll please come up, state your name and address for the record and be sworn in. Kevin Young.
All right, so raise your right hand. Do you solemnly swear that the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do. 6250 West 9 Mile. I'm at the property right in behind it. Horton came in. We didn't gripe. We didn't come here and do nothing. They said they was going to fix everything, make sure the drainage was good. They lied. Floods the shop out all the time. Got 6 inch more dirt on the other side of the property, and now they're building a firehouse. We're just becoming a bowl down there, so. I know we ain't Horton, so we probably ain't gonna get listened to, so. That's it. Have a good day.
All right, now I've got, I think it's Donna Young. If you'll please come forward and state your name and address for the record and be sworn in.
Donna Young, 6250 West Alma Road.
Raise your right hand. Do you solemnly swear that the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes. So it's the drainage at the end of our road. We are flooded and it just started. So I oppose this 100%. It is, yeah, it's terrible.
Could you speak into the mic, please?
It was mostly just, she was saying that the drainage, could
Drainage,
you,
it's the drainage.
just for my reference, will you show, or kind of point on the map
So-
there from the red block? Are you left, right, up, down?
We are behind that.
Right up this way?
Yeah.
Okay.
That our property is next to that. So
And the-
our backyard is the new fire department. And the subdivision, the new subdivision is on the north side of us. So we are in a bowl now, and our yard is just flooded. And I can only imagine what this is gonna bring, so. And like she said, there's only 4 of us back there. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Board members, do you have any questions for the applicant, staff, or the members who spoke here today?
Mr. Chair, I do, I guess, welcome back, Horace. No. I feel for the residents. I really appreciate you guys coming and participating in this. It's not fun. It's intimidating to sit up in front of a microphone. I was in the Perdido area, and I said it, I don't know how many years ago, you guys are behind. You need this, a plan. We were behind. You're behind. The county was behind when we put the LDC together back in the 90s. And this is why we get paid the big bucks, zero. But these types of issues are a direct conflict with us trying to make sense of what there was no sense before. And there's so much growth out there. I feel, it's very interesting to me. We've seen all ends of it today with the cases involved. And this one, being on one side of it, I think we've seen every side of this. Horace, my question to you, it pertains to a particular development in Perdido as well as this one. What and how do you address issues with a particular development with the existing landowners adjacent that are obviously affected by drainage? I know that each case goes through the process. They have to be approved with their drainage and their plans. But if, let's just say if, they somehow miss the mark or fail and landowner is affected by the development, how is it simply through compliance and code, or how do you, I mean, there are issues where this occurs with the best intentions. And I'm just, my question is, how do you address these? Because they're not, people aren't making these things up.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. If there is a drainage problem, and if they want to continue to develop this property, we have a development review process, and we have well documented areas that have some problems. Our engineering department, under our engineering director, Ms. Joy Blackman, and her staff and team. So if there's some noted historical problems with stormwater, we're going to address that, because we don't want known development to exacerbate or make a stormwater area worse. We want to make it better, to improve upon it. So those things, we do look at the historical records, note that to review the stormwater history of that site. And if there are some challenges, what they need to do right now, they can contact our engineering department, and they can look at it, and they can meet with them and provide and start having discussion with our engineering department if there's some stormwater challenges that they may be facing right now.
And I bring it up because I was asked by a particular case, and I think it definitely had an effect. And I don't want the residents to check out and say, well, they're just, it's D.R. Horton. We live in subdivisions, we're affected by these things. And I just want them to know the avenue, if it's Joy Blackman, County Engineering, come to them and say, this is the issue, it's not going away. And I truly feel like they're going to attempt to do this. And I know of a case that I'm going to talk to you afterwards about, because somebody said, listen, this is coming at you. And I see where this is happening. And you got to know on 9 Mile Road, look at that growth and look at what's going around there. Anyway, so I just wanted to ask that to get it out so they know that there is a participatory. It's not just, sorry, man, slam dunk, you're out of here, we don't care what you think.
All right, do we have any other comments from the board at this time, or questions for anyone? Mr. Adams?
Yes. Horace, I guess is planning for a gas station to go there, right? Instead of apartment duplex, or?
This is the thing, they may have said the use, but we as staff have to look at all of the potential uses that can go there, not just whether it could be a gas station, because again, the zoning, they change.
Well, I was asking about the gas station because you got a church right there. Could a gas station go there and sell alcohol with the church there?
That's gonna be something that we gotta review. That's a good question, and we will review that. Yes, sir.
But how many units, if the apartment duplex, how many units could they get in on that?
The density, if it changed, you could have the possibility for the density 25 dwelling units per acre.
Thank you.
I mean, let me state something. I mean, we're really focused on the intent of rezoning to that. It could be anything under that category. We have to stress that to the public always. It's everything under commercial zoning. I mean, as much as we can say or speculate, we're not here for that. That's what the Development Review Committee is for. And same thing with flooding or anything like that. Yes, quality of life comes into the vote here, but ultimately it falls on county staff and Horace, everything like that. If you go through Development Review, that's the whole premise of that. It's a total different arm than this, but it's one of the great benefits of our county and every county that has it. We have the ability to vet these projects, so it is a better and improved scenario. At least my 10 cents with that.
I would also say, Mr. Chair, and for you as well, again, from a development standpoint, I could not see the viability of any apartment complex on such a small acre. It doesn't make any sense whatsoever. Therefore, I'm not saying it couldn't be. The zoning does allow it. But on the other side of the coin, as a developer, it wouldn't make any sense economically to try to throw on there. That's just my 2 cents.
I've got a comment. The only thing that gives this case any life is the fact that there's commercial adjacent to it. Does staff have the history on the zoning of that property next to it?
Are you referring to the one that's commercial now?
Correct.
That's the one that we had a rezoning on.
It was a couple months ago.
A few months ago, because that already had the future land use of commercial, and the applicant wanted it to be consistent with the future land use. Back in the 90s, it had gotten a flu change to commercial.
It was the old hardware shop. I think we talked about that.
I mean, if I remember correctly with the history of that one too, I mean, this one I just don't remember on fully, but I mean, it was always commercial use, correct? I mean, in its history. So why wasn't it ever back when they did the land change? I mean, it feels like it would have been a down zoning when they did this back then.
They would have had to request it, and
If it was being used as commercial back then even, I felt like when they did the land development changes and all that and the zoning, that they would have taken that into consideration. I think that was the discussion with that commercial next door originally too, if my memory's serving me
are you
right.
talking about when we did the repeal and replace in 2015?
No, I'm talking about specifically when we went to do the rezoning on this commercial next door, we had that discussion why this was not caught in the suite back originally when they did all the zonings. Like this one here has had a commercial building on it since the 60s. Why wasn't this caught then?
I don't know. I wasn't privy to the research that the staff that did that, so I don't know.
I think personally, in response, that's all of our issues in Perdido, and I think it was such a massive undertaking that the simple math is there's no way they were going to get every one of them right. Because the same thing, again, you go down Gulf Beach Highway, good luck. You've got spot here, there, and I've been before, and I have lost a case trying to do the exact same thing from a place that sold gas and off of Gulf Beach Highway, and we were denied by this board. And so I just tell you that it's, I think it's, you're right. In a perfect world, it would have already been that because you wouldn't have removed somebody's property rights.
But they also wanted to stay consistent with the future land use. So when all that happened, if the future land use was consistent, then they probably wouldn't have changed the zoning. And then the county wouldn't have gone in and say, hey, we're going to change the zoning on this parcel, Mr. Smith, so.
So it's issues like this are, historical uses of properties that basically tie our hands when it comes to cases like this.
Can I get a follow-up question on the, if the storm drainage, of course, is always going to be an issue. You already mentioned how the process is to get to the storm drainage. My question is, after the building is built, after the drainage has been put in, and there's still issues, talk about that, because I think that's more of a concern, because everybody says it's going to be perfect until it's not perfect, and then after it's built, where's the recourse?
Again, that's a very good question, Mr. Rushing. That's why we're going to need for the adjoining neighbors to stay with this project all the way to the end. Because staff, if there's historical showing there's some historical stormwater challenges with that area, that the owner or the developer got to get it right to try to minimize that as much as they possibly can. And if they do not, guess what? There could be some violations from code enforcement. There could be some other actions that the county can take to help relieve that zoning, that stormwater challenge was coming from one of those adjacent properties.
Mm-hmm.
There
And
are
Horace,
some
I think-
other avenues that we can take.
I think that's what the residents today are saying, is that they have lived here behind where this application is. They've had other applications surrounding them go through, and the issues have continued and maybe gotten worse. I'm not sure, and I think, so that's the big concern for the folks that were here today is, hey, we've seen this come through, the issue's gotten worse, and now here's yet another one, and we're not getting anywhere.
Yeah,
So,
Mr. Walker, that's yes. So even if this doesn't go, if it's not recommended, you still can reach out to the engineering department and reach out to them and say, hey, we have this stormwater challenge, and let them, I'm not the expert, they can start looking at it. So just don't use this as so still say, hey, I want to talk to engineering, the county engineer about a stormwater area that's going on in my area, and they can begin to do some research. And as a matter of fact, whatever the case is, I can try to make you in contact today with that department if you have time to want to talk to them about it, and be glad to do it.
thank you. Are there any other questions about this case? Does the applicant have anything else to add? Staff? All right, at this time, I'll entertain a motion from someone. Not all at once.
I'll move to approve Z 2023.
I'll second.
11, based on staff findings.
Okay, we've got a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? All right, all those in favor, please signify by raising your right hand. All those opposed? All right, the motion carries. All right.
For the members that did come and are concerned, please stay with this, because it is a concern for us too. When people say they're going to do what they're supposed to do, let the, yeah,
Well, but
Okay.
I would say to the members of the public, do stay with it. Go to the development review committees. That's where you have a voice.
Remember, the Board of County Commissioners has the final say on this.
All right, so that was our last hearing for this meeting. So unless there's anything else that we've got, that we're adjourned for the rezoning meeting. We'll take 5 minutes and we'll start up the regular planning board meeting.